Hey, happy Saturday, everybody. Dan here, and we're going to take a look at episode 6 of WandaVision. Now, normally I like to do these videos on Friday, but this Friday I just spent the day with my best friend Lisa, who had birthday was yesterday. It's a big birthday, but we won't say the age because you don't do that. But she's much younger looking than her age, that's for damn sure. And we had a lot of fun, but that pretty much took up my day. And we did watch WandaVision last night. So I have watched it 3 times now, and there are things that I'm still trying to figure out. But I think I've put together some thoughts that are pretty interesting. I'd love to hear your guys's. So if you pop in while I'm doing this and you want to throw in some comments or have thoughts of your own you want to add, let me know. Or I can get to them for the next time I do a show, your choice. But I definitely want to let you know there are spoilers ahead. This is going to be a spoiler review because you can't talk about this show without spoilers. Now, this show it just keeps getting stranger and stranger. And as many of you know, at the end of episode 5, again, I'm going right into spoilers. So if you don't want to know, take off. Okay? Because I'm going to tell you who the cameo was at the end of episode 5 that is big in this episode. So 3, 2, 1. All right, so last episode, Wanda opens the door at the end and discovers her long-lost brother standing in the doorway. The only problem is that it's not really her long-lost brother. It is Pietro Maximoff, at least it appears to be Pietro Maximoff, but Pietro from the Fox X-Men movies, played by Evan Peters, not by the one played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's part of the MCU. Now, this, of course, led to a week-long speculation by everybody and their brother. Okay, not my brother. My brother doesn't watch this show, but I'd be curious to see what his speculation would be if he did watch it. Might have to bring that up to him sometime. Anyway, so Evan Peters shows up. Suddenly it's, oh my God, they brought in the multiverse. Oh, all the X-Men fans are now in. Oh, we're going to get Magneto by the end of the show. And I think there was a lot of reading into it. I didn't get the feeling that's what we were looking at. I think I made that clear in my last review. Partly because I don't think that's a good way to bring it in. I don't think you just... Okay, the best way to put it is, if you were going to pull anything from the X-Men movies, would you pull from the last 3 X-Men movies we got? Yeah, Days of Future Past was good. Then after that, they started deteriorating, and you look at Age of Apocalypse and or Apocalypse, whatever they referred to that one, and the Dark Phoenix, they were horrible. Why would Kevin Feige want to bring in that franchise? Why would he not just start over? You know, plus the ones that people know, Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, Hugh Jackman, Halle Berry, the ones that would be really big names to pull in, I don't think they're going to come. Yeah, you can bring in Evan Peters, and you could probably get the younger actors who played, that played the newer characters, but why? Why not start fresh? Why bring that baggage with you? So that's why I didn't think that was the case. Now, hey Jamal, how you doing? Good to see you. So that's my first thought there. Now, getting into this episode, it gets really interesting because it starts off with the previously on WandaVision, which has been interesting because last week they actually put in a different line of dialogue involving Monica. It was actually from her saying that Monica didn't belong there, where in the episode she actually says Monica's had to rush home. So let's see what Jamal say. I think because it's been... Okay, yeah, that's Jamal's response there, is that I think it's because it's been around for 20 years as a brand, but it couldn't be wrong too. Oh yeah, X-Men is a great brand. But like I said, you're not going to be able to bring in the big names that are really what would be worth bringing that brand in. You could bring in, like I said, Evan Peters. You might get Michael Fassbender or James McAvoy, but that's iffy. But you're not going to get Hugh Jackman. And that's really Hugh Jackman, Patrick Stewart, and Ian McKellen were the big names from there. And you're not going to get those guys. Jackman's already said, I'm done. Patrick Stewart supposedly it's been said that he's turned down coming back as well. So there just really isn't a big plus for bringing it in. And like I said, you bring it in with the baggage, but you definitely want to bring the X-Men characters in. Absolutely. But just maybe start fresh. Andrew, how you doing? It could be Shuri, but let's bring up Andrew's comment. Just popping by, but the person I think Monica's alluding to may be Shuri. And you know what? I absolutely thought it could be Shuri too. And it still could be. And there was a lot of speculation that whoever it was going to be female, because people had had the translators going on their while they're viewing, and the Spanish or the Portuguese version used the female gender when talking about it. But the problem is in the sixth episode, she actually refers to going to meet her guy. Now, guy can be used as non-gender, but I don't think it's used that often as non-gender. So it could be Shuri, but also Shuri got blipped. Shuri got snapped away too. So would she really? I mean, I kind of think she would just be getting settled back in. So I agree with you, Jamal. Now this is the one I think it's going to be. Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel would be a great guy. Blue Marvel is an engineer in the Marvel Universe. Adam Bashir, I think his name is, or Bashir. Created by Kevin Graveau, who is a friend of mine. I love Kevin. He is awesome. But he currently, in the Marvel Universe, Blue Marvel works with Monica Rambeau. So it makes a lot of sense that would be this character without having the huge speculation that would come along with it. If it was, like I said, Shuri, I think is possible. But if this is where you're going to introduce somebody, this is too small of a thing to introduce Reed Richards or any member of the Fantastic Four or Doctor Doom, which a lot of speculation is going by. So I think Jamal's got it right there with Blue Marvel. So yeah. Again, Jamal's got it right. It's only been 10 to 12 days since the snap. So I think Shuri would just be getting back into being home. So I think calling on her to suddenly come help me with this. I could also think it could be her Skrull friend or a Skrull. So, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. But Blue Marvel is the one. If they're going to bring it in a character, I think Blue Marvel would be a good one to do. All right, let's get into the episode. I've got my notes here. It's getting to a point now that I can't just cover the episode from memory. These are getting so in depth and dense that I have to literally make notes and follow the notes. So this one was called the All New Halloween Spooktacular, and as I was getting to the previously. On WandaVision, that was a big thing in that it actually showed the footage of the Aaron Taylor Johnson Vision or Quicksilver being shot and killed. Now, that is to remind that was a simple thing to remind the viewers that, hey, the Quicksilver we just had show up, the Pietro that just showed up, not the same guy. So if you're just a casual viewer, this is to let you know they're not the same. Well, that right there is pretty big, and you got to figure out what's going on with that. But I think that is the first sign that we get that there's something else going on. Yeah, Jamal, you're right. It's way too many eggs to keep track of without a notebook. Like I said, I've watched this episode 3 times, and I'm still making notes and thinking of things as I go. Okay, so we get the intro, we see the original Quicksilver, and then we get the total Malcolm in the Middle opening, which, I mean, that is as blatant as the Bewitched opening, as pure Malcolm in the Middle. And we're getting the kind of late 90s, early 2000s sitcoms. They're not really going by decades anymore. We're kind of speeding up. And I think there's a good chance the sitcom thing is going to be gone soon, because there's only 3 episodes left, and I don't think they're going to go all 3. I think we may get one more, and then I think the last 2 episodes will be all hell breaking loose. So I think we're about to enter the 3rd act, and it's going to change drastically, just like the 2nd act changed drastically. So, because episode 4 was the start of the 2nd act, and that's the behind the scenes one, or that's where we followed Monica instead of Wanda. But yeah, so I think this will be the last time. We get our first sign that Pietro is a speedster, in that he's actually zipping around the house. But I think one of the keys here is that Billy and Tommy are doing narration, and they're actually talking to the camera in a way to signify that, unlike any other of the characters in the show, WandaVision and those two are now talking. They're active characters. I think if they were just controlled characters, they wouldn't have their moments to follow. Everything would be through Wanda's eyes. Well, Vision was now a character. So the fact that Vision was being shown on his own, and he's doing all this stuff now, is why I thought Vision was alive. Now, there's so many caveats to that. But I think if they're actually an active narrator, then they're real in a sense. And I think we're seeing that with Billy and Tommy now. The fact that they could do that means that they're real characters, and we're probably going to end the show with them still around. Now, this was kind of interesting, and it might be symbolic of something else too, or more information. And it's kind of one of my big twists, and I think I'm gonna jump right into it. The picture on the side here is Wanda, of course, in her comic book accurate costume. That's supposed to be a Sokovian fortune teller, which her mother was. Well, not Sokovian. I think it was a different term, the Romanian or something like that. But so it's a nod to her mother. But this being her comic book accurate costume, and then we get Vision in his comic book accurate costume. Then we get Quicksilver in his comic book accurate costume. Makes me look at 2 other characters who are in costume that might be from the comic books, and we're just maybe that's a sign. And Wicked and Speed are kind of in their comic book costumes too. Speed is more Tommy is more in his uncle's costume than his own, but Wicked is in a version of his costume. So, and Jamal, you're right. Billy does have the same powers as Wanda, so it makes sense that he's the first on camera. That maybe he's starting to control things too. Maybe he's the reason Pietro's there, stuff like that. But we'll find out. The 2 other characters I'm thinking about who are in costume are Agnes, who a lot of people assume is Agatha Harkness. I'm stuttering here, but Agatha Harkness. And her being in a witch's costume would then fit. So it's kind of accurate. If she is Agatha Harkness, then her being in a witch's costume, because she was burned at the stake as a witch and died and came, or saved herself by marrying Satan or Mephisto. I mean, there's a big backstory, but her being in a witch's costume would, Agnes would be a comic book accurate costume. Second one, and this one just hit me a few minutes before I decided to do this. Herb is in a Frankenstein costume. Through this whole episode, and as we've been going along, Herb seems to know what's going on as well. He and Agnes seem to be collaborating at one point with the gardening tools, the trimmers that go too far. but he's dressed as Frankenstein. And that makes me think about another character that has been hinted at, which is Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper's character, who has the ability to bring back the dead, has also been brought back from the dead on his own. He died and was brought back. Now, Frankenstein is a character that was brought back from the dead, so he's dressed as Frankenstein. So, the fact that he's been brought back from the dead, maybe that's why they dressed him as Frankenstein, to give us that clue. Maybe Herb is Eric Williams. Do we see what his name is on the board? I haven't had a chance to look. So I need to go back in the blow up and see what Herb's name is. But, maybe that's how Wanda ended up in that part of New Jersey, because that's where Eric Williams was. And, she wanted to use his ability to bring back his necromancy to bring Vision back to life. Just thinking about that one. So it just seemed obvious odd that he was in a Frankenstein costume. He was also in a monster. Night of the Living Dead is playing in the background on the scene. I saw somebody talking about the Night of the Living Dead thing, and that it wasn't actually a scene from Night of the Living Dead, that it was footage made to look like Night of the Living Dead, but it wasn't actually Night of the Living Dead. Now, I haven't been able to verify that, but that's pretty interesting, because they would have to pay for the rights to use Night of the Living Dead. But I thought that was fascinating. Yeah, and it could be that Herb's a monster, but it could also be that Herb is just that he's back from the dead, and he's not really Frankenstein. He's Frankenstein's monster, but okay. So going to keep moving on here, and something else I noticed: the whole scene there with Vision wanting to do his own thing. He's going off script. He's going to go and do the neighborhood watch thing instead of They Living Dead in public domain. It's possible. I'd have to double check that. It's usually 20 years after the property owner's death, or something like that, or maybe even more than that. So I don't think it would be in public domain yet. But that'd be worth looking up at another time. But that's a good thought. So they're doing the scene where he comes down in the costume and he's kind of butting heads with Wanda, like, this is the only thing in my closet. And does he actually get dressed? I thought it just kind of appears on him. It changes, but and as their buddy, then he tries to make up for it again. He does a little flirty thing, but it doesn't really work. But then there's a thing where he has to go to the neighborhood watch, and he's lying to her. And we find out later that he's lying to her. But Pietro comes in and says, well, I'll take care of it. I can do, I got the XY gene, and, having the, might be a reference to being a mutant, the X gene. But he basically offers to stand in, and Vision turns and just punches him on the shoulder. And Pietro looks really uncomfortable when that happens. Now, the first time I saw that, I thought, well, maybe it's just, it's just kind of an awkward thing. He doesn't think, Vision's being kind of goofy or dorky. But then I realized where he punches is one of the bullet holes where Quicksilver would have got shot. We see it later on in the episode when we see him as dead, but it's the same place Vision punches is one of the places Quicksilver got shot. So is that a coincidence? Possible, but it was really strange. So I'm thinking it's kind of appropriate, because we do see him with the wounds later on. Yeah. Okay. So, but yeah, Vision's starting to rebel, and when he leaves, Pietro gets the comic accurate costume, and of course he gives one to Tommy, which is the kind of a precursor to the fact that Tommy's gonna be a speedster. And then when we get outside, we move outside, and that's where everything goes weird. The dimensions of the screen, of course, changes because we're outside the hex. And we see them bringing in the drone that Wanda had brought out and thrown. And it's a Stark tech. And some people noticed it and some people didn't. But this time it's more obvious that this is a Stark drone. So, again, not a good thing to send in against Wanda. Actual Stark technology. She's already got a negative thing towards Stark tech. So that probably wasn't a good call, but they did. So they're checking it out, and then this confrontation where Monica goes off on Hayward for basically attacking Wanda, and Hayward comes back at her about being soft on superheroes or superpowered people. And of course, Darcy and Jimmy get involved too in kind of defending her. And you got to love Darcy. Darcy just calls it as she sees it, says the line about, hey, it's a guy with his own death squad that almost got killed by his own death squad. Or something to that effect. I wasn't as good as what she said. And of course, they get back and forth. And Hayward takes some low shots, but basically saying that it was a good thing that she wasn't there when her mom died, and that she didn't have the stomach to do the job. So there was a lot there, and there's a lot of tension and stuff that you see. Hayward is not happy she's back. He's not happy with the situation, and he really wants to kill Wanda and get the Vision back. And I did a video last week or a few days ago that talks about Hayward, and that's part of what I was thinking. Is I think he's not a bad guy per se in the, he's not a henchman of somebody or anything like that. I think he is kind of a corrupt government bureaucrat who got in way over his head and started doing things he wasn't supposed to do because he's afraid of what happened. He's afraid of Thanos and these galactic level threats that he doesn't feel the Earth is safe from. And he wants to basically stop it. So he started doing things he's not supposed to do, like trying to build his version of Ultron using the Vision, his version of the shield around the world that Tony Stark was trying to build. I think that's pretty much what I was thinking. What did you say about my mama, Marlon Wayans? Okay. So yeah, that's what I think is going on with Hayward. I think he is in way over his head and is desperate to fix the situation. He knows that Wanda can tear it all down. I think that's why she went to S.H.I.E.L.D. in the first place, to get the body back, because she realized he was being experimented on. So that's where I think Hayward's motivation is. I don't think he is, like I said, in league with whoever the big bad is, if there is a big bad. I don't think he sent Monica to this particular thing on purpose. I think it's quite the opposite. I think he wished Monica had nothing to do with this, and he could have quietly come in and solved this problem, but he doesn't have that ability now, and he kicks them out. Now, I love the fact that as they're leaving, it suddenly becomes action Jimmy Woo, because he's been kind of played as a little goofy. Now he's kicking ass. I mean, just sucker punches one guy, takes out another one. Monica grabs a gun, and all Darcy's going, what? No one told me this was the plan. So I really do love seeing that character growth, in that they don't play them just for stupid or inability. He's an FBI agent. He should be able to take care of himself, and it's obvious he can. So that was a real nice thing to see, and that Monica can kick some butt too. But so they throw some bodies in the shed and lock them away, and then they're still on the base, which is interesting. We go back to the trick-or-treating in the town, and we get the first hints that Wanda knows that this isn't her Pietro. At least it doesn't look like her Pietro, and she's trying to figure it out. She's trying to piece it together, and she's trying to test him, and he calls her on it. And we start getting the idea that this is her Pietro, and it's not at the same time. He knows what happened to her Pietro. He's not acting like the X-Men Pietro. And that's where I think we can close the door on this being him pulled from the multiverse. He's not acting like that, but he seems fully aware of his role in the sitcom. I'm jumping a little ahead here, but he refers to himself as, he was brought in to cause trouble, butt heads with the brother-in-law, cause Wanda grief, rile up the kids. A guest star. He was pretty much saying what that type of guest star is supposed to do on an episode when they're brought in, and the acknowledgement of that breaking of the fourth wall again takes. I don't. He's not being controlled by Wanda. If anything, I think he's someone else. So, but we'll get into that. Okay, I'll see where you're going with that, Jamal. So we're getting that with Wanda, and also we find out that Vision is not supposed to be on Neighborhood Watch. He lied to her, and this is where it comes to air. And Herb is, it's like, Wanda, is something wrong? Do you need me to change something? And that's where we see that Herb is totally in the same mindset as Agnes of, we need to keep Wanda happy. He's much more self-aware than maybe Norm was last week, where it seems like there's certain levels. There's people who know what's going on and are trying to play along, even though they're still in it and can be snapped. But, they're aware. While people like Norm and some of the others, this is just my life. This is just normal. And then when they're snapped out, it's that they've been traumatically suppressed, but they're not actively engaging or actively trying to make things smoother, where both Agnes and Herb are, which is why I think Herb may be something more than just the neighbor. He's maybe something closer to Agnes in that than just another neighbor. Also, when they're trick-or-treating, there's the kick-ass line, which I think is great because as a lot of people know, Evan Peters was in the movie Kick-Ass with Aaron Taylor Johnson, the other Quicksilver. So both the people who played Quicksilver were in the movie Kick-Ass. So they dropped the word, the name Kick-Ass, and then she repeats it just to drive it home. Like, yes, we're acknowledging the two were in the same movie. So I just thought that was kind of cool. Meanwhile, Vision, the reason he's lied to her is that he wants to find out what's going on. He no longer believes that. I mean, it seems like it's a long time past, but this is just the next morning, the next day from the big fight they had, and Pietro shows up. So for him, it's still fresh that he thinks that Wanda is controlling these people. He found out about Norm and all that, and he wants to discover what's going on. He's trying to solve it. So he is going further away from their normal area. And as he gets out there, he starts noticing these people are slowing down. They don't seem to be as active. Within the town square, you've got all these people running around and they're all near Wanda. But as you get further and further away from Wanda, the control over the people seems to be limited. And it's almost like they should be in stasis. Like maybe she's just kind of froze anybody who's not needed. Like deactivating the cast, just putting them aside. So that comes up a little bit later too, but it's interesting because there's one point that Vision sees a woman trying to hang up a Halloween decoration and her husband behind her, and they're just kind of in a loop. They're doing the same motion over and over and back and over and back, and you just see this tear driving down the side of her cheek. And you feel like she's being tortured, she's stuck there because Wanda doesn't have enough focus to push so they're getting like their marching orders, but it's like a bad reception and it's not getting out to them like a loading issue. So they're stuck there until the next thing comes along. It was creepy and it was sad to see the tear coming down. Yeah, and as Jamal's pointing out, let me go ahead and put that up on the screen. Norm said he was in pain when talking to Vision. Wanda's control is painful. That's a good way to. One of the things that's interesting is that Norm doesn't actually use the name Wanda. Agnes does, but Norm only says she. And I think that could be important, or it could just be them, giving us breadcrumbs and not the full answer. But and was it painful because physical painful or psychological painful because he's worried about his father? His father's sick. He's desperate to get back to his father. So it could be a psychological pain that you're trapped. You cannot even control yourself. Maybe you don't even know, maybe you're watching all of this, or maybe you're not. But how so it could be that kind of painful too. It could be psychological. So we'll have to see on that. But it's an excellent point, is that he did seem to be in pain. Okay, at this point, we got to get to oh my God, that commercial. Oh, the Yo Magic commercial. So far, all these other commercials seem pretty straightforward. There's some form of a version of the tragedies in Wanda's life. The spilled red juice is the blood spilled by the explosion in Lagos, when she tried to get rid of Crossbones and he exploded and killed a bunch of people. The ticking on the toaster was her being trapped by the Stark bomb with Pietro when they were a kid. The Hydra soak is when they were being basically brainwashed by Hydra and held captive by Hydra. And the Strucker thing is when he used the stone to bring out their powers. And I don't get this one. This is creepy as hell, watching a little boy basically holding food that he can't open and dying of starvation. So that's just was creepy as hell. And it was very reminiscent of 90s commercials, because I saw that and I remember, those types of commercials, claymation. And so that really struck home with those commercials. But yeah, that was creepy as hell. And I'm still not 100% sure on what that meant. Usually I got these pretty good, but the tagline is the snack for survivors. And so, I mean, is somebody feeding on Wanda's magic? Is that what we're trying to say? Or is this supposed to be like Wanda's time in the orphanage growing up with Pietro and how they were basically starving? Or is it that she's going to die without magic? Like, is the magic is the only thing saving her? Oh man, I mean, I gotta admit, this one's got me. I don't have a good feel for what this commercial is. Like I said, not only did I watch it the 3 times I watched the whole episode, but after the episode last night, I was watching it with my friend and her kids, and the 15-year-old boy Braden asked to have it run back just to see that commercial again, because he was trying to figure it out, because it is just an odd commercial that doesn't quite fit the other the format the other ones have been in the sense of what they were meaning. This one just seems to be out there, and so maybe I'm missing something. So if anybody's got an idea on what the hell that commercial meant, it's a strange one to me. So after the commercial, we get inside, and it's night's falling. I think this might be the first time we see night in Westview. We see it outside. Hell, it's night most of the time whenever we go over to Sword, but it's all usually daytime. But I think because it's a Halloween Spooktacular, there has to be nighttime stuff. We see there's a marquee on the background for the movie theater, and it's got The Incredibles, which is about a family of superheroes, and The Parent Trap. And I'm assuming that's the more recent one, the late 90s version. But again, about a pair of twins that switch places. So it's kind of they've been having a lot of fun with the marquees, I think. I don't know if they're actual clues or just story appropriate ones. Pietro and Wanda get into a conversation, and this is an important conversation. This is where we find out that he knows what role he's supposed to be playing, but he talks about how he was shot dead in the street for, I'm trying to remember exactly how he put it, was for no apparent, like a chump, shot like a chump for no reason at all. And that's fascinating because Pietro died saving Hawkeye and a child. That doesn't seem like being a chump for no reason at all, unless unless whoever it is who is Pietro isn't Pietro, is somebody pretending to be Pietro, and someone who would look at sacrificing yourself to save someone else as a waste, as not an honorable thing. Somebody who, he was just shot for no apparent reason. He gave up his life for stupid reason. See, now that's what came across to me. So they're talking about what happened to the Aaron Taylor Johnson version, the MCU version of Quicksilver, but it doesn't have the same resonance that I think the actual Quicksilver would talk about it with. So, and then he talks about how he heard that she needed him, or she heard him calling her, and that's why he came. But he doesn't know why he doesn't look the same. They both talk about where their accent went, but didn't actually answer the question. It was more, where's your accent? Where's your accent? So it doesn't get answered, but it's like they're acknowledging the questions fans have. It's almost like they predicted. They went through and said, well, at this point, fans are going to be asking these things. So we'll have somebody ask it. We're not going to give the answer, but we'll bring it up in the show. That's some tight writing. I actually like that a lot. Jamal says, the magic yogurt is Wanda is using her magic, serving on it, or maybe it's Vision can't, or Pietro can't live without magic. Okay, I see where you're going with that. Jamal's suggesting that maybe so it's symbolic of Vision trying to leave, and then he's going to die without the magic. Okay. Yeah, that's as good an excuse or good of an explanation as any. Because like I said, it makes sense. All right, going on, let's see. Oh, but that whole conversation gets broken up when we find out Tommy has super speed and is going to take his brother to another part of the a couple blocks up where they have full-size candy bars. And the neat thing is when he runs over, he gets the candy bars, he comes back. Those are not full-size candy bars. Those are the giant king, the share with your family type. Those are not just full-size. So those were pretty aggressive. And trust me, I would run up the street to get those from when I was a kid trick-or-treating. That would have been huge. But all this is going on, and Tommy's got super speed. And back at Sword Base, Darcy has hacked into the system and discovered that Hayward actually has a way of tracking what's going on in the Hex, but he hasn't told anybody. And how he's doing it is through the Vision. That he's using he's tracking decaying vibranium, which is fascinating in itself because Vision's vibranium has been merged with synthetic life. I'm not a scientist. I don't think I completely get how they explained it. It was a lot of jargon that the go nowhere, do nothing. But yeah, that's so the fact that it's decaying is fascinating. How vibranium decays? Okay. So he's tracking him, but he's also being able to pick up the people around him. That's when Jimmy notices the people are barely moving. But I'm wondering how it's almost like he's using the Vision not so much just as to track him through the decaying vibranium, but also using him as a sensor to see what else is going around. And that's kind of fascinating. I'd like to know how that would work. When the kids run off to get the candy bars, they're told not to go past Ellis Street. And first thing, if you hear the name Ellis and it's involved with comic book stuff, you immediately think Warren Ellis. And it's possible that the street's named after Warren Ellis. It's also possible that it's named after President Ellis, who is the president in the MCU, at least in Iron Man 3, and I think in other films as well. And if that's the case, well, President Ellis was named after Warren Ellis, because the Iron Man 3 was the Extremis storyline, and that was a Warren Ellis storyline. So there's a good chance that Ellis is named after that, or it could be named after Ellis Island, where immigrants entered the United States. So having this on the border of between the real world and Westview, maybe that's why they're doing it. But either way, Ellis Island or Ellis Street is the border for going out into the real world, and the kids aren't supposed to go past that. But so of course, Vision's going to go past that. But while the kids are off, Darcy finds out about tracking the Vision. She also discovers that Hayward has Monica's blood work, and discovers that her DNA has been modified twice by going through the barrier. So yes, they are absolutely setting her up to get her abilities. For those who don't know, Monica Rambeau in the comics is an Avenger and has superpowers. I would tell you what her code name is, but she has a lot of them, so it gets kind of convoluted. She originally started off as Captain Marvel. She's also been called Photon, Pulsar, and Spectrum. So she could be any of those. Now, Photon was her mom's call sign as a pilot, so they might go with that. They can't really go with Captain Marvel because there is one. So you still got Photon, Spectrum, and Pulsar that they could go with. So we'll have to see which one they're going to use. I don't even remember which one. The new Zoo is saying that Photon, and there's a good chance they're going to use Photon as an honor to her mom, and I think that's probably the one they're going to go with. There's actually a Spectrum News channel on the screen in Sword headquarters. I saw that, and Spectrum is my cable service. I don't know about for everybody else, but Spectrum News. So I thought that was pretty funny when I saw that up there. But yeah, so they've dropped every name at one point or another. They also talk about photon radiation when they're talking about the shielding for the vehicle that will take them into, or the vehicle she needs to go back inside the barrier. So they have name dropped just about every version of her name they could. But so they're told that she shouldn't go through the portal again. And of course, she's going off because she got a text from the engineer, and we brought up the engineer earlier. But so we find out that it's most likely a guy because she says she has to go meet this guy. So there's a good chance it's going to be someone of name. I just don't necessarily think it's going to be Reed Richards, Dr. Doom level that a lot of people are speculating. I still think Blue Marvel, as Jamal mentioned, I agree that it could be Adam Bashir. I'm leaning more and more towards that, who I think it is. Yeah, so I think it's going to be Blue Marvel, who she's currently working with in the comics too. So that'd be a cool connection. Back inside the barrier, Vision gets to the outskirts and sees that people aren't moving at all. Basically, he tries to talk to somebody, and one of the kids' costume is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which I thought was great. But he transmutes back into his regular Avenger costume, and he goes up into the sky to look around, and you see that all the activity is happening in the town center. While it gets further away, it gets darker and darker and darker, and it really does seem like proximity to Wanda is what's important. The further away you get, it's not that these people don't have they don't have free will at all, but they don't have marching orders, so they're just kind of following, waiting for the next command. Yeah, it's kind of weird. But then he sees a car just stopped, And he goes over and it turns out that's Agnes. And he talks to Agnes. And of course, she's, as I mentioned earlier, she's in a witch's costume. And she was supposed to be driving to the town square, the party, which is supposed to be at the town square. And Vision's like, how did you get lost in a town you grew up in? Well, Agnes didn't grow up in that town. That's why she doesn't have a driver's license or anything. The town square scare, yeah. So obviously that's just more sign that Agnes is not from the town. You know, she could get lost in the town, and she never, and he doesn't. She doesn't correct him and say, "Oh yeah, I know, I live here, whatever." So yeah, I think she is from outside the town, and I think that goes back to why we never meet Ralph, and we never see her house, and I think it's because she doesn't have that. I think it's her cover. Just like how she pointed out that Monica didn't have those things. Well, she knows to look for those things because she doesn't have a house or a family. So she made up a Ralph to be referred to him all the time to make everybody, oh yeah, I have a husband and I have a house, but I don't necessarily think she does. And there's a trope. The news says, I do think we see her house in episode 5. Okay. I'll have to go double back and check that. But otherwise, I don't think Ralph is that important because, oh, you're right, the azaleas outside the house. And she just says that's her house, but yeah. Interesting. I still think she killed the dog, but either way. There's a trope in sitcoms of having a spouse that's never shown. The first one that comes to my mind is on Niall's wife on Frasier. We never meet the wife. So I think that Ralph may not be Mephisto or the big bad. Ralph just may be that trope in sitcoms, the one we never meet. Because she doesn't mention Ralph at all in this episode. And she mentions Ralph every other time we meet her. Yeah, that's just kind of flying all over the place now in this. This is going on much longer than normal, but then I've got active parts, so it's active participants, which is a lot of fun. I'm glad you guys are here. Okay, so there's the other part that really comes to my mind is when Quicksilver or Pietro and Wanda are sitting on a hay bale, and while the kids are off getting the big chocolates. And he starts talking about the children. Now, everybody's been asking about the children. Why are there no children? It's for the children, but there are no children in town. And suddenly, in the special episode, Halloween special, there are children. Children everywhere. So where did these children come from? Well, in this case, where Jimmy asked all our questions for us in episode 4, Pietro's asking our questions here. But he also is supplying the answers. So he's not even asking her in the sense to get an answer. He's like, oh, yeah, they're probably just, asleep in their beds. And you're doing all the ethical stuff you can. You don't want to traumatize them. And, couples are staying together and people getting better jobs. But, yeah. So in a way, Pietro was giving us the answer, which leads to the question is, how does he know? If he just came to town, how does he know any of this stuff? How does he know that there were no kids? He's been there the day. I mean, he just got there. So for him, there have always been kids. How does he know that everybody's coupled up? How does he know that some people just have better jobs? Again, leading me to think this is not really Pietro. This is someone pretending to be Pietro to get information out of Wanda. Trying to find out how she did it. How did she start it? And she says flat out she doesn't know how it began. Just like she said to Vision before that. So I think the Pietro was put in by someone else. That's why she didn't know why he was there. I think it's someone pretending to be her brother to get information or to find out what's going on. Why? I don't know. I theorize that it could be a scroll. I put this up on my Facebook page just the other day, is what if somebody went in trying to make contact with Wanda and it was a scroll, and they changed into Pietro to try to blend in. But when you walk in, the hex changes everything to era appropriate, and there was no Pietro in 1989. The MCU Pietro would have been 1 year old. They were born in 1989, and that was on 80s episode. So they went and got a Pietro from a different multiverse, and just looks like the one from the other universe. How does Pietro have his powers if he's an imposter? Well, things aren't working the way they're supposed to be. How does Vision have super speed? Vision doesn't have super speed. He's never had it. But suddenly he has super speed. And if it's somebody who can manipulate reality, especially in the hex as well, could be that he's just faking it. What else? Also, why would he have his memories then, and why didn't he choose to look like Aaron Taylor Johnson? Well, the reason that if he was a Skrull and he changed the, you're right, he couldn't be a Skrull and have the speedster powers. When I thought of that idea originally, we hadn't seen him use speed yet. But the memory thing, why wouldn't he look like Aaron Taylor Johnson? Maybe he doesn't know what Aaron Taylor Johnson looks like. I don't know. I got nothing on this one. It's just kind of all over the place. Wanda, but see, like he said, it's almost like he's pumping her for information. So that's why I don't think it's Pietro, because why would Pietro actually care about this stuff? Yeah, there's definitely something else going on. The whole push to get her to have kids, to raise the kids and stuff like that. So, yeah, he was put in there by someone else. Yeah, I think the Skrull thing is a stretch. But, I just don't think he's Pietro. And I don't, like I said before, I don't think his appearance here means that we're getting all the X-Men, at least not yet. We're not going to get him yet. And it does seem like he was interrogating her. All right, so that's when things start hitting the fan. Vision starts getting outside the bubble, and he's pushing through the barrier, and he's really fighting it. And at the same time, Monica and Jimmy have gone off to go meet the guy, leaving Darcy to crack the last firewall. And she finds this project called Cataracts, which is, I think, very interesting because, of course, cataracts have to do with vision. So I'm really curious what that's got going on and what that has to do, what this little project is that Hayward has going on. But it definitely involves the vision, I think. And then we get the vision starts going outside, and it's Billy who senses he's in danger, which is interesting because you think Wanda would sense it. But Billy, who has some telepathy and senses that his dad's in trouble, and tells Wanda, and Pietro makes the joke about, well, your dead husband can't die again, and she just blasts him into, across the field, across the park. And we don't know what's going to happen with him, but then she powers up and just extends the hex. It gets bigger and bigger, and it ends up enveloping all of the sword compound. Now, Darcy revealed herself when the Vision was trying to get out, and as he's getting out, his body is being pulled apart. But I noticed that once he was outside the barrier, even though he was getting pulled back, as his body was being pulled apart, he didn't change to that desaturated color. He didn't change back to how he last looked. He didn't look dead. So it's not, and there was no gap in his head, and the Mind Stone still was there. So what's pulling him back? is he forced to stay in there? Or because he got far enough out, but his body didn't like switch back to being dead or anything like that. It just started pulling him back in, tearing him apart. I don't know. See, that I didn't expect that reaction. I thought that they would just pull him back in solid, but to pull him apart was fascinating. And she expands the hex that it envelops him to save him, but it keeps going. And Darcy had run out there to try to help Vision. And of course, Hayward has her arrested and handcuffed to a truck. So as this expands and everybody starts running away from it, Darcy's stuck there and gets pulled into the hex. All the vehicles get pulled in, a bunch of the sword people, and it turns Sword into a circus. Now that's a nice metaphor for the fact that it's, what Wanda probably thinks of Sword, but also it's appropriate because this is a big setup with tents and stuff on the outer edge of town, which is normally what you would see with a circus. It's the type of thing you would get. Living Vision belongs in that world. Yes, I agree. But again, it just seems like, why is the Mind Stone still there when he comes out? I don't know. Still bugs me on that one. But all right, so the sword people get turned into clowns and mimes, and I do love the fact that when one of the mimes, the first mime we get to see is pushing against the invisible wall, like the barrier. And of course, the episode ends with a close-up of Wanda's face and her eyes going from that bright red back to normal. And it's like very creepy. It's like, okay, she is way powerful. And this is the end of Act 2. This is where everything changes again. So it'll be really interesting to see how all of this shifts again and what we're going to get going forward in the last 3 episodes. I think, as I said earlier, I think we're going to lose the sitcom trope. We probably got about 1 more episode that we're going to get it. Then I think the last 2 will be more focused on revealing what's going on and maybe big battle type of thing. I think we may learn who the big bad is sooner than later, or at least that there is a big bad. Yeah, let's cover this. You think that the Mind Stone's going to come back because we see it in the trailers. And yeah, I've seen that clip. It does look like it's there. I've got a little problem with that in why would Marvel bring back the stones already? Those were the big MacGuffins for 23 films. They're finally gone. There's so many other things that the MCU could deal with. It almost feels like the Disney or the Star Wars problem that all the plans are to build a Death Star. Oh, we built a Death Star, but it got blown up. So we're going to build a bigger Death Star. Oh, it got blown up too. Oh, we're going to build a planet Death Star. It's the equivalent of Lex Luthor always doing real estate scams in all the Superman movies. I think that they need to get away from it, so I'm hoping they're not bringing back the stones. Also had another thought on the Mind Stone thing is, one question I don't know is how long in Endgame there was the battle, and then we saw Cap getting on the time platform to return all the stones. How long was that? Was it the same day? Was it later that day? Was it a week later? 2 weeks later? Is there at any point that maybe from the end of the end game or from after the snap or the blip, they brought everybody back and to Cap taking the stones back? Could could this be taking place in between? And that there is a Mind Stone at that point? because it's the Mind Stone's there until Cap takes him back. So when did that happen? So maybe she doesn't rebuild the Mind Stone. Maybe she just borrowed the one that they had borrowed originally. I don't know. And I don't know if there's, I mean, could she rebuild the stones? Maybe, and that's what the big bad is trying to do, is get her to rebuild the stones. In the comics, Mephisto wanted the Infinity Stones for himself. That would make a lot of sense. There's probably a lot of other characters that would love the Infinity Stones. It just seems like kind of going to the well too soon to bring back the stones after they just got rid of them. So have to think about that. And I know it's in the trailer, but it just seems kind of over the top to try to bring him back again. So, but, oh, and the vibe I've been getting off of Pietro in this episode, there's been a bunch of characters that they've talked about as could be the big bad. And there's always been talk of Mephisto and stuff like that. But one that keeps popping up, and I've kind of brushed off, but between the look of Evan Peters and speculation that this character might also show up in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, makes me think that maybe it's connected and that this person could be playing him, is what if Evan Peters is actually Nightmare? What if somehow this is all being, Nightmare is getting Wanda to do this because all these people then are basically in a living dream and he's feeding off of them. He's feeding off of her magic, like the Go-Gurt thing. And also the fact that the kids talk about Pietro being a vampire. Well, Nightmare is kind of a psychic vampire as he, lives off of people's dreams. So again, it's a wild thought, but I don't know. I could see Evan Peters, just the way Nightmare looks in the comics. I could see Evan Peters being Nightmare. That would be an interesting casting. And that gets away with the whole thing with Mephisto. The problem is people are afraid that China wouldn't actually Peters X in the show's equation. Peters X in the show's equation. Huh. Have to think about that. I think it's Wanda. She's the big bad. All signs point to her. I agree that all signs are pointed at Wanda. My problem is it's Act 2. We just finished Act 2. And I don't think you have two major female characters that you introduced early in the franchise, and you've killed one now, and the other one you're going to turn into a major bad guy. That just seems like bad. Oh, Peters is the unknown. Yeah, Peters is definitely the unknown. He is definitely the variable in this equation. So yeah, I think Wanda, I think she might turn bad, but she'll be a sympathetic bad, and Multiverse of Madness could end up bringing her back, a la House M, because I don't think they can leave her bad. I think she needs to be vindicated at the end of this. She can't be turned into a bad guy. They have done so much tragedy to her. To not give her a redemption arc would just turn a lot of people off. I mean, of all the MCU characters, she has had it pretty much near the worst, with her parents being killed, being trapped by a Stark bomb for a few days, growing up then from in an orphanage, being experimented on by Baron Strucker, being forced into Hydra, then forced to work with Ultron, and just on, and watching her brother die, and then falling in love with Vision, and then having to not only watch him die, but having to kill him, then to see him brought back immediately and killed again. the tragedies and just that this woman has gone through and suffered through. If you make her the bad guy, it's just really bad. It's just really mean and victim, blaming the victim type of thing. You've got to find a way. And, I think that's the connection. I think that's what Monica's job is to find the connection to Wanda and help her come back, or at least to humanize her, to understand. So, because Hayward is obviously the one that's supposed to make us think that she's the bad guy. But the fact that we're only in Act 3 and we have or Act 2, we're just going in Act 3, and we've got two people that clearly look like the bad guy, either Hayward or Wanda, is a good chance it's neither one of them. Spider-Man 3 is before Doctor Strange, but Spider-Man Far From Home is also before that. So timeline-wise, it's Endgame, Endgame, WandaVision, Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man 3, Electric Boogaloo, or whatever they end up calling it, Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness. That's how it's supposed to go. So Spider-Man 3 is going to be affected by whatever the multiverse thing is. And if you look at that, then there's a chance that this is also what brings that J.J. Jameson in. That's that J.J. Jameson appearing at the end of Far From Home might actually be the first multiverse thing. Something to think about. Yeah. In Far From Home, Vision is dead 6 to 8 months. So, yeah, this takes place before Spider-Man Far From Home. And I think Spider-Man 3 is going to pick up almost immediately after Far From Home. Because that's such a shocking ending that I think it's going to just be like roll right into the next day and him dealing with the fallout of being outed. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much straightforward right there. So, okay, I think I've covered everything I wanted to. Speculation-wise, oh God, there's just so many places this could go. Just we could end up with Aaron Taylor Johnson's Quicksilver popping up. We could end up with. I don't think we're going to get a Magneto sighting, but there's always that possibility. I think we're going to get a big bad, and it's going to be. I think that the cameo we're supposed to get, the famous cameo or the cameo that somebody, Paul Bettany has always wanted to work with, and that hasn't been revealed. I think that'll be whoever's playing the big bad. Is it going to be Mephisto? That seems to be where all signs are pointing, or it could be Nightmare. Someone else is trying to pitch the idea that it was actually the Kree who are trying to make trying to turn Westview into a transportation base because they do everything with hexes, but that just seems bizarre to me. There's a lot of speculation out there, and some of it is a lot of fun, and some of it is just wild. I saw one group that's talking about what Hayward is making our Sentinels. That's why he's using the Vision to make his own Sentinels. Maybe? I don't know. I think we just got a lot of possibilities here. I equated the show to being like a jigsaw puzzle, and we've been getting a lot of pieces, but none of them are the edges. None of them are the building blocks to solve everything. We've just been handed a bunch of scraps and no idea what the big picture is, and nothing to say, to work with, to build the puzzle off of. But you mean Nuzu? You mean the Skrulls having sleeper cells, or the Kree aren't the shapeshifters? Yeah, there's definitely a Captain Marvel connection going on here. But I mean, we got Monica Rambeau in here. That's the first step right there. But yeah, the Kree. Do the Kree have sleeper cells? I hadn't even thought about that. Oh, okay. So there's a mention of it. I don't remember that. I haven't seen that movie in so long now. I may have to rewatch that. Probably should, just for everything going on. Kree sleeper cells. Interesting. Could Westview be a Kree sleeper community? Yeah. Yep. Your guys' guesses are as good as mine at this point. There's just so much going on. But all right, guys. Any last questions or anything you want to throw out there before I wrap it up? Yeah. I think thinking about the Kree, I'm gonna be putting that through my brain now. That's probably gonna be by morning. I'll probably like, hey, I got 17 new theories I could come up with here because of the Kree. Or maybe it's a Super Scroll, because Super Scrolls have powers. Yeah, it's the Fantastic Four powers, but it's the MCU. They can change things up. But all right, guys, I am going to wrap it up. Thank you for hanging out, Nuzu and Jamal. Everybody else who popped by or catches this on Twitter or YouTube after, please hit the like, subscribe buttons. And everything else. There will not be a new Pop Go the Writers tomorrow night because of Valentine's Day. We're taking the night off, but I will probably have some more. Thank you, Jamal. Probably have some more concept or ideas during the week that I'll share in video, and then we'll be back next Sunday, where we'll be talking about episode 7. And have a good night, Jamal. And I'll be back. I'll be back on Friday with a review of episode 7. And then Sunday night we'll have another Pop Goes the Writers next Sunday, not tomorrow night, but next Sunday. So everybody have a good night. Good night, Zoo, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.